Well, the final double-header weekend of IPL 2022 kicks off at the Wankhede Stadium as the Punjab Kings and the Rajasthan Royals are all set to play out match number 52 of the tournament. This has a lot riding on it, and the points table will reflect that. If you are the Punjab Kings, you've just beaten the Gujarat Titans. You want to try and keep things in your own hands. If you win your next 4, you get to 18. That should be good enough. But if you are the Rajasthan Royals at the back of 2 defeats, you now are in danger of getting sucked into the dogfight that the Delhi Capitals and the Sunrisers Hyderabad and maybe even the Punjab Kings would find themselves in if they are to lose today. They'll go level with RCB if Sanju Samson's side lose 3 in a row. So there's a lot riding on this game, and we will look forward to it on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by IQ 95G. It's a very good afternoon to Daniel Vettori and to Imran Tahir, as we tend to see spin play a big part in these afternoon games. This one's got a bit riding on it. 2 teams where you never quite know what to expect from the Punjab Kings, and where the Royals look good, they've lost 2 in a row, Dan.
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. Particularly the Punjab team, they have the players that can take any game away, but we haven't seen any consistency from them. And that's probably part of their game as well, that they're going to be that aggressive. But you've probably seen it tempered a little bit. Changes with Mayank dropping down the order. Rajapaksa batting with a little bit more control, and they looked really good in their last game when they handed off that great start to Liam Livingstone. So it feels like they're building towards building at the right time at the back end of the season.
Yeah, what an interesting time of the IPL is, Imi, where you've got the last 4 games or so. There's no real standout team, even the Titans having lost a couple of games. I mean, you remember the CSK teams or the Mumbai Indians teams that used to dominate all the way through to the playoffs. Now we're seeing a lot of teams win, lose, win, lose. What does it take to be successful in this phase of the tournament?
I think that shows the level of cricket. It's a very high standard IPL cricket, you can call it, because you don't know which team is going to qualify, and they're all playing good cricket. So I think that's why you've seen different results. Where in the past, Mumbai, Chennai, they're always going to be on top because they've been the consistent teams because of their team balance. But I think it's exciting also for people watching the game and for the players as well. It keeps them in the game, and every game they play, it's excited, because they know that they have to do their best to get the result in their side. Otherwise, other team will jump on.
Yeah, I mean, that's that phase of the tournament. In fact, I wonder if this is the time where discussions of what will be enough to qualify have already started, given that now we can see how the table is shaping up. And with Punjab likely to get to a maximum of 18, do you think 16 will be sufficient this year, just looking at that table? You expect Lucknow, Gujarat to take 2 of those spots. Are you safe with 16?
Those conversations started 6 months ago, I think. Can we get to 15 maybe, or 16 with that bonus point? Look, I think the exciting bit is there's 8 teams in it, and the 2 teams that are not in it are the perennial favourites or the perennial champions in CSK and Mumbai. So I think there will be a lot of discussions around net run rate. There'll be a lot of discussions around how we're going to chase down a total, because that could give us just that little bit of impetus going forward. So I think 16 is the magic number that a lot of teams will be working to, realising that that may still lead to net run rate. But I think 16 is the number that teams will want.
All right. Interestingly, while we speak of net run rate and chases, we're seeing both captains admitting that they would bat first if they win the toss. As it turns out, Mayank Agarwal's won it, so the Punjab Kings will bat first. Nothing new for Sanju Samson, he says, who loses tosses, but this time he would have chosen to bat first as well. Now, I wonder if that's telling us something, because we're seeing the last 2 games won by the teams, last 3 games won by the teams batting first. Otherwise, it's an even split when it comes to the afternoon games. Why are teams batting first suddenly?
I think the heat's playing a huge part. You heard it mentioned by Graham Swan. Obviously, it affects him a little bit more than it did Mayank, but Mayank mentioned as well. So I think there is a theory around, if we exhaust ourselves in the field and then have to walk out and chase 190, it's incredibly difficult on those openers, the top 3 or 4, to actually be able to be at the top of their game, whereas this gives it a chance. And then Mayank referenced the fact that they think the wicket may break up a little bit. I'd be surprised if it did. I think normally in these afternoon games it plays pretty true and pretty fair, but that heat is becoming a real factor.
Yeah, in your experience, Imi, with the multiple franchises you've been with, we're now entering the 7th of May. You know what the conditions are like here. Does the heat really get discussed in terms of what you should do in the toss, especially for these afternoon games?
Definitely, I absolutely agree with Dan there. It's very difficult when you field for 20 overs, and then it's a lot of pressure on your batters and the whole team because in hot conditions it's not easy, and especially heat in India at the moment. So I think it's a right thing to do bat first, and then obviously get your boys relax, and hopefully their top batters can score runs and bowlers have a rest, and then when they get in, they'll be fully fresh to obviously defend whatever the batter set for them.
Are there a lot of training sessions in the afternoons, Imi, in this time? I mean, I know it's different in this time, it's COVID times, they're allocating it, but do teams train a lot in the afternoons during the IPL?
Look, I think the the T20 cricket gone on a next level, and it's very professional approach going into the games and stuff. So I think it's probably individually whatever you have to do. I think that's what the coaches are want you to do. If you're happy to just go down and feel the heat and come up, I think as long as you're ready for the game, and that's what my belief is, that you're fully committed and fully ready for the game. And I don't think you need a big warm ups and stuff like that. And I don't think the people, the most of the players are doing it these days. Like I said, what you need to get out of it, and just go back, have a nice cold shower, and get ready for the main game, which is
That,
gonna be count, not the practice.
that's a CSK champion talking, isn't he? Don't waste too much time, get your job done, go have a shower, not these long hourly meetings, which I know some franchises tend to have. Not the ones you've been part of, I hope.
Definitely not. No, I think Emmy's right that the conservation and understanding of how to deal with the heat plays a huge part, and I think some teams do it really well. Some teams understand the role that the build up and the warm up, and even the training the day before can affect performance. So these teams both have experienced coaches and understand exactly how to build into these games. But it'll be fascinating to see how Rajasthan deal with it, being in the field the whole time.
It's just 33 degrees. Just looked at it on my way to studio. It's not so bad. No, it is hot, and we do know in our part of the world in Mumbai that there is a heat wave. In fact, likely to affect things today and tomorrow. So yeah, with thoughts with the players. With Sanju Samson, thoughts with him too. He doesn't seem to be winning tosses, and he seems to be quite the sport about it. Not much he can do, but he's just losing tosses non-stop. His Rajasthan Royals.
Well, they win when they bat first, so
Yeah.
they should be reasonably satisfied. I mean, one of the few teams that have pulled that off, and obviously that's down to Butler, and it'll be interesting to see with their changes that they made today whether that batting order can still be as dominant as they've been.
We're going to look at the teams. Rajasthan is the only one that made a change. Punjab are sticking to the same team that beat the Gujarat Titans in the last game at the DY Patil. Yashasvi Jaiswal is back, played just the 3 games at the start of the season, then was left out as they looked for a different sort of combination. But they've brought the left-handed opener who was retained last year back into the team, and out goes Karun Nair. I wonder what sense you'd make out of that change at this stage of the tournament, Dan?
Yes, it's an interesting one because the key for them is Butler and Sampson. Obviously, they're their 2 best players, and when they utilise them is going to be the way that they win the game. And Butler obviously opens, but Sanju's been 3 or 4, and then they've mixed and matched with the rest of the order. So it actually feels like they've confused themselves around what they're trying to achieve, whereas at the start it was just all out attack. Let's take the game on. On the flip side of that, they've got their bowling attack almost perfect. I mean, they've got 5 frontline bowlers. Kuldeep Sen has been a revelation, I feel, since he's come back into the team. So if they can get some consistency with that batting order and a batting approach, aside from Joss Butler, then their team looks almost complete.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that team, I mean, it's a funny one. Now we'll have to see Padikkal perhaps move out from the opener slot, bat either 3 or 4. Now they've tried Daryl Mitchell, who they left out. Before that, they tried Jimmy Neesham, and first they'd given Rassi van der Dusen a couple of games too, and they left him out. Are you surprised that they're still not fulfilling their 4 overseas players complement? Would you have liked to see someone like Rassi van der Dusen maybe get an extended run, especially in that middle order where they're looking for somebody?
Yeah, I think I would like to see Rassi in there, because I think he's a very good player, consistent player, and he didn't have a good run like we were talking about Nokia the other day. So I think especially when the batting is not being consistent, I think he could be a good guy to get in there. But we'll have to see that. Yeah, but there is a lot ask from Josh Butter again today and Sanju Samson, because obviously they are the 2 big guys for them.
I think it's quite the conversation to have here, where you have an established international who you know his track record of, and you play him a couple of games and decide. We had this chat with Tim David yesterday. We see it ever so often then in franchises. Why they don't believe that, say, an established international who plays in that position would be better off than a number of Indian players that change the entire sort of template of your team? And what causes this sort of thinking or decision making? What's it based on?
How long we got?
Take your time.
I find it, I find it incredibly strange. Go back to the Daryl Mitchell situation, where Daryl Mitchell is 3 or 4 months removed, maybe a little bit longer, from starring in a T20 World Cup as an opening batsman. And now we see that Rajasthan are trying to mix and match with their top order, their opening combination with Jaswal. Looks like he'll come back after having a couple of games early on. Whereas, why haven't they walked into that easy conclusion that Daryl Mitchell can open the batting, or Rassi Vastudusan can open the batting as well, because they have played an exceptional amount of international cricket and have been successful. So what you're saying is that your domestic player who hasn't been in form is now all of a sudden better than your 2 established overseas players, and it doesn't make any sense. And therefore, you have to dig a little bit deeper and say, well, within the franchise, do they know a little bit more in terms of injuries, illness? So there may be a little bit of that going on, but this just seems like the case of overthinking a very simple situation where you have these 2 quality players, and you could even throw Nisham into that mix as well, where you could give them a go at the top of the order, who you would think, because of all their experiences, because of their performances and their talent and games that they've won for their countries, would be the obvious solution to slot into that top order position. And I suppose the flip side is, or you just give Jaswal an extended run rather than in and out, Karanaya, Nisham, Mitchell, because this is the missing piece for Rajasthan. Everything else looks set in stone. They look like they've got a really good team, but by doing this, they could undermine everything that they're trying to achieve.
Amy, what does an overseas player go through when something like this happens? You're yourself trying to wonder, am I not as good as, say, an uncapped player, with due respect to the uncapped player, but he himself is also out of form. Now you're back, you're making a call to go back into the team based on both players who've been in the nets or what you've seen. Just trying to think of whether an overseas player in such situations gets a raw deal.
Look, I think from my experience, I think players are quite cool. Some players desperately want to play because they think they're good enough and they can bring a lot of energy in the team. And teams spend money on them and they want to show them, they want to prove them, like, we are here and that's why we are good enough. That's why you got us here. But I think on the other side, if you obviously pay the player a lot and then he's not playing any game, I don't think he'll be bothered about it. I have to be honest, but I think what he can learn from IPL, which is also benefit him going into the future wherever he's heading to after the IPL. Practice hard, learn from the big players, and be around in that atmosphere. I think you can learn a lot of things if you look around. And then, especially for the young guys, because if there was no IPL and any other T20 leagues, there won't be a chance for these youngsters to get to meet these guys, who are the best Indian players, all overseas players. So I think 2 ways of look at it. One, if you're on a big contract, I don't think you'll be worried about it. Like I said, you improve yourself. And on the other side, yes, if you're coming to prove yourself, you desperately want to play in any team you are going to represent.
All right. Now, this is a unique predicament. Maybe it's not as much about overseas versus Indian as it is just the management of that one position. Like Dan says, Karun Nair also has got just a couple of games now. He finds himself out. Yashasvi Jaiswal's back. It changes the batting orders. We'll just have to wait and see what they have to chase and how they go about it. Punjab Kings are unchanged. They stick with the same team that beat the Titans. No changes there. So they're happy with the extra batting, and they're also quite confident that those 5 on the right, including Rishi Dhawan along with Liam Livingston, can be a solid enough bowling attack. Nice to see Rahul Chahar doing fine. Didn't complete his quota of overs in the last game, but clearly that wasn't a serious injury. So is this their best team? I know you've been calling for Benny Howell, but now that they've won, this is probably the team that they'll stick with for the remaining 4?
I think so, and it feels like 3 games in a row maybe they've selected this team. And they've made subtle changes, obviously, with the batting order in the last game. So they're continuing to tinker and trying to find that exact balance. But it's always nice when a team gets to this point of the season, has a win, and then continues to select a side, because then you're going to get some belief going through that group, and then you'll get a feeling from the I suppose the fringe players and the likes of Rishi Darwin. He'll get more and more confidence around his bowling role, and if he has to bat, then he can complement whatever that top six has done. So it bodes well for Kings. I think we've spoken highly about them ever since the auction, but now it feels like it's all coming together, and it really is on the back of that batting order and the likes of Rabada being a wicket taker and Arshdeep Singh being able to hold it down at the death.
One piece perhaps that isn't quite coming together is Johnny Bairstow, who was given the chance to open in the last game. You look at Bairstow's average this season, it's not the player that we knew for the Sunrisers, who really took the IPL by storm. And if you look at the lowest average for a top 5 batter this year, Sunil Narayan's been at the receiving end of a couple of run-outs and cheap dismissals. But he's averaging 11, strike rate's 105. We're not quite seeing the best of Bairstow. Do you expect him to open? We'll find out in about 10 minutes. You expect him to open today as well, batting first?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a belief that the quality of that sort of style of player can come to the fore pretty quickly, because he is such a quality ball striker. So I think he'll get an extended run, whereas you look at some of those other players in that list, with the likes of Narayan, who can be in and out, Rahane, Manish Pandey, who probably don't have that strike rate to fall back on. So you can see them get pushed to the side a little bit quicker than the likes of Johnny Bairstow, because they see him as a potential match winner. And I believe that the class that he has should sneak into this game.
Shikhar Dhawan opened with him last game. Shikhar Dhawan's got a challenge here. If you look at just his record against the two in-form Rajasthan Royals spinners, he strikes at less than 100 against Ashwin, dismissed 3 times in 12 innings. He strikes at just over 100 against Chahal, but also dismissed 3 times in 10 innings for not a lot, an average in the 20s or so. So there's a matchup here that we need to watch out for. Imi, if I look at that batting lineup, you've got Dhawan, Agarwal, Bairstow, Livingston, Rajapaksa, all guys who love to bat at the top. We're seeing Mayank Agarwal drop himself down the order. Today they're batting first. What do you think is their ideal 1, 2, 3, looking at the talent of players they have? I'm just going to wait for Amy to reconnect with us for a second. But I guess this conversation can be had involving Liam Livingston, who we are saying at times is now having to wait a bit too long to get in. He's proper box office, isn't he, Livingston? And if you look at just his strike rate this season, he's striking at nearly 200, which is just the best strike rate for anyone who's faced, who's at least got 200 runs. Dinesh Karthik just above him, but he's keeping Russell, Maxwell and now Rovman Powell in that list below him. I guess that's the question now. At what point does Livingston walk in? You do not want a situation where he's coming in with just 7 or 8 balls to face.
It's difficult, because obviously they've set him up to come in at a certain stage, but the 2 batsmen that are in have played well. So as long as it's not him dropping down the order, then I think they've managed it relatively well, or as best they can, because it normally means that 2 batsmen have played pretty well. And we saw that in the last game with Shikhar and Rajapaksa. So I think they're getting the balance right. I mean, we would love to see Livingston for 40, 50 balls, but if it's on the back of what he did the last time, it's on the back of a really good partnership, then I think they'll be satisfied. So that it looks like he's ready to go the whole time, and they just got to get that timing right, which I think they have.
You know the guy well. What does he see himself as his best use in a T20 game? What is he is he the kind that likes to go in with 15 overs left? Does he prefer clear a situation with just the last 6 or 7? No,
he's pretty comfortable in any situation, and it's almost the case he's happy to bat 4 as long as he gets in early, and if he doesn't get in early, then he sort of wants to open. So he's just one of those guys who wants to be involved in the game, and you can see that he has the ability to go from ball 1, which I think sets him apart as a top order batsman, to have that clean striking for an extended period of time. So he's definitely not a finisher. I know we're not allowed to say the word finisher anymore. Yeah, but we can.
Wishes the beard.
He is far from that. He's just a class top order batsman who can bat anywhere. What's the ideal position for him? It's debatable, but I think it feels like they've got it right most times.
Well, I guess what separates him from a top order batters than most others that we see is his ability to just run down to fast bowling and whack it. I mean, there are many ways to hit big sixes of fast bowling. What he did of Mohammad Shami the other day. And we're seeing that he just backs himself to step out, almost like how the traditional batter is to step out only to spin. What makes him effective? It seems to be the kind of thing that not everyone can execute.
Well, I think it's a confidence, first and foremost, to play that shot and to hit the ball that hard with that long a backswing, and he does it because the backswing's so quick. I mean, there's not many batsmen who can actually get through the ball, catch up to the pace that the likes of Shami. There's no pace that actually worries him at all. It's potentially the faster it gets, the further it goes. So I think it is confidence, his ability to get down the wicket, and that bat speed allows him to hit the ball so far.
So is that a lesson perhaps to bowlers to change it up to Livingston?
Well, I don't think it matters because I think he has the ability to adjust. When I've seen bowlers, I'm trying to think, stifle him, I can't actually think of it. You know, everyone defaults to maybe wide and slow, and that could be an opportunity because he does swing so hard and so through the ball that maybe that can get outside his arc a little bit, like we saw with Daniel Sams to David Miller last night.
Yeah, we're seeing a quality bowling lineup today, Amy. I think you're back with us. Just discussing Liam Livingstone and the ability for him to just step out to fast bowling and still hit it a long way. It's not what a lot of batters tend to do. What's the best way to bowl to somebody like Livingstone from what you've seen?
Yeah, I feel like I played against him and played with him. I think he hit very well straight and the cow corner and mid on side. But I think bowling outside off is the best option to him, especially slow balls, wide jokers, and mix it up really. But I think anything straight coming in, I think he's got the ability to destroy that. So I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. So yeah, he's a dangerous player, but I think just keep the ball away from him. I think that's the best what the bowler can do.
All right, let's see if that's what Rajasthan resort to. Most of their pieces, like Dan Vettori says, are coming together. One of the pieces that is certainly part of this team success is Trent Boult, but he's not quite at the wicket-taking form that perhaps we're used to seeing in previous IPLs. Even the power play impact is a bit down, Dan. We're looking at just the 1 wicket in 12 overs in the power play. I think that was the last 5 matches. Has bowled a beauty to KL Rahul already this season. Is he getting bored, Trent Boult?
No, I don't think so.
Getting to it?
Yeah. He's such a competitor that those numbers will hurt him a little bit because he'll want to be the primary focus as a fast bowling unit, and I think he still is. I think he's the go-to guy. He's probably being used slightly different than he would have with Mumbai or with New Zealand. I think Sanju's sort of had him all over the place and even hasn't bowled him out a couple of times. And that was due to Kuldeep Sen bowling so well, and I think giving him a chance to close out an innings.
And because you gave Daryl Mitchell an over occasion,
there you go.
Which didn't make much sense. Yeah.
Look, I think it's just, he has been used slightly different, but the class of him is that he can bowl in all 3 of those phases, and that's why captains turn to him in every single stage. And I think if you reflect back on that KL Rahul wicket, that's Trent Boult at his best, going round the wicket, thinking of something different, still being able to swing it and trying something, and potentially maybe he's tried a few things this tournament that haven't quite come off, but he has that class about him that you keep backing him and he'll give that performance.
Yeah, that economy at the death is around 14.8. Does Trent Boult feel sort of good or confident about bowling at the deaths? Does he see himself as a death bowler? That's one part of his game that still comes under scrutiny.
I think so. I think he's worked hard on it. You've seen him go to a slightly lower arm action to get the Yorker in and to be able to push it across right-handed batsmen and almost bring in a little bit of reverse swinging. I know he's worked exceptionally hard on that, and maybe it's just a slight execution thing. Like all bowlers that we talk about when they're struggling at the death, if you miss the execution slightly, then you can be put under a heap of pressure no matter how good a bowler you are. If you execute, once again, like Daniel Sams last night, then you can actually contribute in those death overs.
All right, I'm going to bring up a stat that Imran will enjoy now. If you look at Rajasthan, they've been successful at the back of Yuzvendra Chahal's form, along with R. Ashwin. And you look at the most wickets by a spinner or by spinners in this year's tournament for teams. Rajasthan sit pretty on top, 28 wickets. Delhi with Kuldeep Yadav and support from Akshar Patel have managed to stay in that pretty close to them. Lucknow with 23 wickets. But Imi, Chahal seems to be in the form of his life. He's picking up bags full of wickets at a time where even Rashid Khan isn't quite among the wickets while he's still bowling well, and other spinners aren't quite having that sort of impact. What's been the most sort of impressive part of Yuzvendra Chahal's bowling from what you've seen recently?
I think I think he's very confident. He's got the experience, been bowling in IPLs from over the years, and especially this year, if you see, he's not afraid to throw the ball in the air, and he likes to mix up with his variation variation and stuff is very good. His line length is very good. So I think he always challenge the batsman when he show them the big flight so they can hit him. But actually his line and length is so good that obviously they couldn't. So I think that's what the main key for him this season, that what he's been doing, he knows his plans, and that's what I believe. When you go into the game as a leg spinner, you have to have a clear plan against the certain batters, that way you want to bowl to them. But I think just he's picking up wickets because he's confident and he's using all his variation very wisely.
How much does a change of franchise perhaps motivate Chahal further this stage of his career? Or was he
maybe at the start, but I think he bowled exceptionally well for RCB last year. And I think like the three spinners that we felt like we've talked about a little bit over the last, or might even be a year or so, is Chahal, Kuldeep Yadav and Rashid. And the fact we talk about when they're at their best, they have that energy or that little bit of fizz. And you see that with Chahal last year. He got it back. He started bowling a little bit quicker with a little bit more topspin, and he was turning the ball rather than lobbing it up. Kuldeep Yadav the same this year, and then Rashid Khan. I mean, he's never out of form, but he got back to his best in the last game just with that energy and finding the right length. And it's amazing how when you bowl with that energy and you get more revs on the ball, all of a sudden your lengths and lines are perfect. And those three have been the best example of that.
All right, innings is underway. Johnny Bairstow started well off Trent Bowl. Let's get a first innings score prediction from Imi first up. Imi, what do you think Punjab will get?
Look, the batting lineup they've got, they should get 180, 190. They can get more. Yeah, I think that's what my prediction is.
190 minimum?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the right prediction. I think these afternoon games tend to be pretty high scoring in the first innings.
Right prediction. Yeah, I wonder what's the right prediction, right? We'll know.
Is that an oxymoron?
All right, more from Dan and Imi at the end of the Punjab innings. Do join us then on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by IQ 95G.